This episode is sponsored by Kiteworks. Now you're opening up a can of worms. You understand by saying that?
Well, I was hoping I might stir a comment.
Oh, you'll stir a comment because that's one of my soapbox items. Probably talked about it 2 years ago as well too. There is a difference between infosec and cybersecurity, but people tend to use the words interchangeably and incorrectly. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Dark Rhino Security Confidential. This is your host, Manoj Tandon, and I am joined by a Security Confidential alumni, Mr. Greg Schaffer, who has his own podcast, the Virtual CISO Moment. If you haven't checked it out, please do check it out. It's a really good show with a lot of knowledgeable information exchange there. But for those of you who might not recall, just in brief, Greg is a great CISO. He's got over 35 years of experience. I'm old.
He knows a thing or two about information security, and he's the author of the book Information Security for Small and Midsized Businesses, which is now in its third edition.
That's right.
Right? And we're going to talk about that here in just a moment. And as I might want to remind you folks, this is a lot of work, and we appreciate you folks listening, but we always love a little bit of love. Smash and like the subscribe button. Leave your comments below. We'll be sure to answer them. But Greg, welcome back here. Give us a little update since 2022. It's been 2 years since you were last here.
Well, thank you for having me back. And it's amazing to think that it's been actually 2 years. It almost seems like a lifetime has passed since then. And that's about like 7%, I guess, of my career. If I think about it, doing this like 35 years, I guess 2 years might be around 7%. That's back of the napkin, not even back of the napkin. It's back of the brain math there.
It's good enough for a government work.
Well, it's pretty much doing a lot of the same. So vCISO services still exists, going strong. We are a small, really targeted, I used to say boutique. I don't know if I like that as much anymore, but we're a very specialized consulting firm for small and mid-sized businesses providing information security risk management services. And as such, we are very picky with who we work with. And we want to really just work with folks that want to build information security programs. So if you have like someone who comes to us that are looking to become just compliant with some sort of regulation, or they want a SOC 2 readiness, that's all that they're looking for, they don't want to build up their program, then we politely say, well, it's nice talking to you, but we're not the ones for you. So, and I think a lot of that has to deal with a lot of the changes that have happened in the virtual CISO field.
Please.
We see a lot of that.
Tell us a little bit about some of those changes.
Well, back in the day, it seems so long ago because, like I said, I'm old. But when I first started the company over 7 years ago, your typical virtual CISOs were those that were CISOs beforehand, or at least the most senior information security risk management executive for whatever business they were in. And they decided, like me, that they wanted to, or had a calling or what have you, to do something different to help small and mid-sized businesses with the experience that they had already gained over years and years of their career. If you do the math for me, that would be about over 28 years of career. But nowadays, you have a lot of folks that are claiming that they're virtual CISOs, or organizations that provide virtual CISO services that are more in line with like being an IT security manager. And I probably talked about this somewhat 2 years ago as well, too, because that had already been coming out more and more. And I think the trend is accelerated. So what's happened then is for the SMBs, the small and mid-sized businesses, I always just tell them, it's like, there's nothing wrong with those services per se, but make sure that you understand what it is that you're getting, because virtual CISO or vCISO means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Yep. So we're more virtual CISO traditional, I guess you could say. It's like, we are security officers. We have done that before in the past. That's the experience we bring. But again, like I said, there's nothing wrong with some of the others out there that it's just a different type of service. But even that's starting to change now too. You're starting to see a split between those where I think actually it's going back the other way, where now businesses are expecting that if you're saying that you're going to provide virtual or fractional CISO services for us, they're expecting that risk management, that strategy. They're not looking for someone to manage the firewalls.
See, I'm really glad to hear you say that, because there is a whole bunch of let's manage the firewall crowd out there. And
Yeah.
what we have seen is, especially in the small business, the S part of SMB, they are they're often just getting cybersecurity from their MSP,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just a pure play technology. The effectiveness of that is fairly limited, not because they're bad people. I don't, but it's a specialized area, and they don't know how to create a multi-layered defensive architecture that actually reduces risk.
Mm-hmm.
It has nothing to do with capability. It's just ignorance, if you will. The knowledge base hasn't developed in them to be able to provide that service. And so especially the small business, I think, is still getting a lot of bad advice out there, Greg.
I agree, and there is a somewhat of a nefarious angle, if you will, in some ways to some of this as well too. The virtual CISO field has become quite lucrative, and for good reason. I mean, you get a good virtual CISO in, whether it be me or anybody out there, they're worth their weight in gold. But you've now have some MSPs and MSSPs that offer the service, but they offer it, and I'm saying this is a minority. Let me just start out by saying the minority of MSSPs do this, but there are some that do this, and SMBs need to be aware of this, that they almost function as an inside sales rep. And let me explain how this works. Just very simple example. Your MSSP vCISO will come in and do a gap assessment, and they'll say, well, you're doing some monitoring, but you really need to be doing better monitoring. Oh, by the way, we offer a SIM service that at a discount for our virtual CISO customers, for you to meet this gap. So what's happened here? A couple of things have happened here. First of all, the virtual CISO now has actually acted as a salesperson. They've produced a solution for a problem that they've identified. The second thing that's happened is that problem really one of the highest risks out there, or is it that they've been incentivized to sell something? So you've lost that objectivity. Now, again, that's not to say that this happens all the time. There could be a virtual CISO service from an MSP or MSSP that has the interests and the best interests, rather, of the SMB first and foremost. But the SMB needs to understand that there could be some conflict of interest. Personally and professionally, for me, I prefer to stick with the 3 lines of defense model. If you're an MSP or an MSSP, you're providing something in first line pretty much. You're providing the technology services to do the firewalls, for example, the configuration and all that, and the monitoring. Second line is risk management. That's traditionally where the CISO has always been. And then third line is audit, which checks first and second line. So if you take that, I recommend that if an MSP or an MSSP is offering a virtual CISO service, at the very least, encourage the SMB to go for their first line services somewhere else. In some cases, I think that they should require it, but I'm not going to be that authoritarian about it.
Well, I think the thing is, maybe one takeaway here is, a lot of the SMB space still is just enormously behind from an education perspective on what it is that they need to buy.
Mm-hmm.
And a foundational question for me would be, is anyone you're considering, I don't care who it is, whether it's Dark Rhino or it's you or anybody that are looking to hire, there's a prime question to ask is, are you selling me information security or cybersecurity? And see how they answer that. Because there is a big difference between the two things.
Now you're opening up a can of worms. You understand by saying that.
Well, I was hoping I might stir a comment
Oh, you'll stir a comment because that's one of my soapbox items. Probably talked about it 2 years ago as well too. There is a difference between infosec and cybersecurity, but people tend to use the words interchangeably and incorrectly. Therefore, sometimes. And first of all, I want to emphasize to everybody that words matter, and it's important that we be clear. Don't just say, "Well, it doesn't really matter if we call it infosec or cybersecurity." It does,
It matters a lot.
because cybersecurity, my point of view,
It's a
is
subset.
is the subset of infosec.
Yeah.
It's the technical subset, and so something like business continuity planning, that doesn't fit in cybersecurity. That fits in information security. Information security is risk management. At the end of the day, if you're talking to somebody and somebody just is insistent on wanting to use cybersecurity to describe everything, just so long as they understand how they're using the word, because really we're talking about communication when all is said and done. Get that straight first and forward. But to your point, if you have an SMB that contracts with an organization that says, we'll take care of all your cybersecurity needs, guess what? They might just take care of all your cybersecurity needs and not the other broader part of InfoSec.
Which I would argue, Greg, I don't know how you feel about it, is the bigger part of it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, before you even place a purchase order for a technology, a monitoring service, a firewall, I mean, umpteen number of gadgets and gizmos that are available out there, you got to understand how you make money,
Right.
right? What makes the sausage factory run? What assets are important in that?
Mm-hmm.
And how can they be compromised? Look at that. And not just the assets could be hardware, but it's also a process is an asset. Can you
Well,
compromise the process? Can you compromise the people?
right.
And if you don't look at the people side of this equation and the process side of this equation that feeds your revenue chain first, I would argue that your information security program is likely not going to be effective.
No, and I would agree. A colleague of mine, when I was a CISO for a bank, and he was an operational risk manager there, um, he he wanted to instill in everybody in the bank a risk management mindset. That was his goal, and everybody is a risk manager, I think, was his tagline, and that's true. And that goes a little bit beyond like cybersecurity is everybody's responsibility, which is what people
Yeah.
tend to say. Well, that's okay, that's right, it is. It's like, don't click on that link, that's a cyber thing. Make sure you have antivirus and all that. Yeah, that's all true. But if you look at it from a risk management standpoint, everybody is a risk manager. That starts off by trying to understand uh, it, you don't have to understand the entire business if you're an employee for a company, but at least understand the business of what you're doing and how that impacts the business. You might not need to understand how marketing does their stuff, just that they do their stuff. And I think it's important that businesses understand that it is a broader topic, and to drill down into the cyber is one thing, and as we said before, it's a broader topic. I kind of lost my train of thought there. I don't know. It
No,
left
that's
the
okay.
station, I think.
Well, we'll get you back on track here.
Okay.
So yeah, no, it's we were talking about infosec versus cybersec,
Mm-hmm.
and infosec is involving people, process, and then technology.
Mm.
If I was to summarize it, right?
Right.
And
That's
if
where
you
we're
don't
going.
address
That the
the people
people.
process part of it, you got a train wreck that's eventually going to happen. It's just a question of time.
Absolutely. So now we have two train analogies there. Train has left the station, and then it's wrecked. So it's just like
Yeah,
that's what happens when we get derailed. So,
that's right. I love it.
but yeah, people and process in addition to the technology, and part of the problem I think with SMBs, and I'm not necessarily blaming SMBs on this, but they sometimes think that it is just technology, and that's a big, in all seriousness, that's a big disservice for when we have some folks that use cyber and infosec interchangeably, because you're promoting that incorrect assumption that everything security wise is just technology related, and and you're gonna you're gonna miss a lot if you don't look at the people in the process, because ultimately they're the ones who are using the technology and how they're using technology, as opposed to just the technology itself.
Yeah. So let's get into your book then. I mean, because I'm assuming that it's for small, medium businesses. So
It's self-description there. I found that sometimes if you just name something what it actually is, like vCISO services, it tends to get the message across. So information
and it's not a super thick book, which means that someone can read this.
Well, yeah, the current edition is about 140 pages, and they're easy reading pages. So, how this started is back in 2021. I created a lead magnet for the website, and it was just an ebook, and it was very very small, only a few topics, but they were common questions that folks were asking, like what's the difference between infosec and cybersecurity, for example? What is risk management? What is a SOC 2? Those sorts of things. And businesses would get really confused because, again, they were conditioned to understand incorrectly that all of this was a technology thing. So I wrote the initial book, the first edition, just as like a little guide to download. And if you download this, then I get your email address. I can bug you. Hey, marketing lead magnet.
Yeah,
That's what it was.
sure.
Well, I got some decent feedback about that, and I did want to expand it, and I expanded it to the second edition, which I thought I had a copy right here, but I don't. But the second edition, I also did a print version of. Again, it actually didn't have my name on it. It just said a vCISO services guide, and so I would give that out at conferences. If they came to the table, you do the booth thing. It's like, hey, well, that's a little bit better than just like a little pamphlet. It's like you've got a little security book here. Well, I started to get great feedback about that. I remember actually being at a conference in Houston a few years back. I think this was in 22, where one of the keynote speakers, unbeknownst to me, held up that version of it at their before or after their talk. I don't remember which, but they said, this is one of the best books, if not the best book I've ever seen, I've ever read about information security for small and mid-sized businesses. And the only reason why I know that this happened is that apparently after his talk, a bunch of people started to come to my table. Hey, okay, it worked, but I didn't know why. I didn't know that that he had promoted this. So between that and more great feedback about the book, I actually hunkered down and expanded the book by over 50% for the third edition. Covered a lot more things, and AI, for example, being one of them.
Well, that's obligatory anymore. You can't call
Yeah,
yourself a consultant unless you're talking about AI.
I had to get AI in here somehow. You have to do that. So, and the goal was I actually released this early by accident, sort of. And the goal was to release this for Cybersecurity Awareness Month this year, which of course starts in October. And but I had solicited for review readers. Hey, I'll send you a copy of the book if you promise to write a review. Not everybody ended up doing it, or it's in the pipeline still that they're doing it. But when I did this was like in late June. Well, come to find out that you can't write a review apparently on Amazon unless the book has actually been released.
Okay.
And so the reviews started to go towards the second edition, and I'm thinking, this is a marketing fail. I'm not a marketer. So it was one of those decisions, like at that hour, decided we're going to release it right now. So we did, and boom. And wouldn't you know it, it's like a couple of cool things that have happened with this thing.
Please, yeah, tell us.
One is that it has reached the Amazon bestseller list for technology books a few times. That only means top 100, so it's not nearly as great as it sounds. But hey, marketing, right? But also, I've gotten feedback.
Shameless marketing, by the way, but that's okay.
But
So go ahead.
I've gotten feedback from folks saying, this isn't just good for small and mid-sized businesses. It's good for folks that are early in their career to try to get a handle on complex information security topics. But I write it in a very conversational manner. And there's even one university up in Minnesota that they're using this as the textbook for one of their cybersecurity classes, and which I think is just amazing. So that's gotten me thinking, well, maybe I got to do like a course for it, or at least some sort of an outline. But I'm just happy that it's had some good, positive effects on folks, and I've already started to take some suggestions towards working on a fourth edition, which will be
Well,
out in
give us
2026.
some. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor, Kiteworks. Defense contractors face immense pressure to comply with CMMC 2.0 security standards. Finding a secure, easy to use file sharing solution meeting CMMC 2 guidelines is a major challenge. The federal government and federal system integrators supporting the Department of Defense have similar compliance requirements for improving cybersecurity and data protection. Accelerate your CMMC 2.0 compliance and address federal zero trust requirements with Kiteworks' universal secure file sharing platform made for defense contractors. Visit kiteworks.com to get started. Walk us through the synopsis of it. What without giving away everything, because of course you want people to buy the book, but
The butler did it. I mean, so just like reading from the table of contents, I talk about I start out with governance, and I think that that's important to start out with governance because um, often it's again assigned to IT. But every section has a discussion about what it is that we're talking about. So everything from policies to information classification to risk management to your different types of risk assessments, qualitative and quantitative, and why they're different. Because sometimes you get folks that they do a risk assessment. I do this too. It's like you what's the traditional way to do a risk assessment? You say, okay, let's think about the likelihood and impact that something bad might happen. All
sure.
right, we'll assign it 3 levels: low, medium, and high, and we'll assign a number to that. Okay, 1, 2, 3, and then we'll multiply those numbers together. We get a 9 for really high risk, and then we have some controls, and the controls have some sort of an effect, and so you can then incorporate that as a fraction. We call that a mitigation effectiveness. So you have a 9, but your controls are pretty darn effective. So you say that that's a 0.05. Multiply that again. Your risk that was a 9 now is a 4.5, which on your scale is a moderate. And so, but you got all this multiplication going around. But what are you multiplying? The numbers, they don't really represent anything. It's fake math.
Sure,
And
it's arbitrary. It's
it's just
relative.
right. It's a numerical representation of some subjective opinion, and which
Yeah.
is fine. But people got to understand that that's not a quantitative risk assessment. A quantitative risk assessment actually takes into account some actual qualities, some quantitative qualities, if you will, like cost of breaches and all of that. How much revenue would you lose if you were down for 7 hours? So revenue, dollars, time, hours, those are actual numbers that you can actually do math on, not these little flaky things. But anyway, back to the book. At the end of each section, I always have a two final bullets. So the bottom line, and then SMB considerations, because for folks that want to, like, okay, Greg, you just wrote a chapter about this. Why did you write it? Well, that's the bottom line. And then how does it apply to me as an SMB considerations? So, and finally, the book, it's not sequential. It's not like a novel. If you want to look up something on frameworks, for example, I don't talk about every single framework in here, but I do talk about a few that SMBs should be interested in. And so NIST Cybersecurity Framework and CIS 18, and probably one more in there that I'm not remembering right now. But if you never heard about these frameworks and you're like, okay, let me go over there and check this out. It explains
Yep.
why they're for.
So would it be a good read prior to hiring a firm or a virtual CISO or a fractional CISO, or during the course of engagement?
I think both. I think that for some businesses, and I'm not trying to kick any of us out of getting a client, but for some businesses, they might be fine just having a guide like this as opposed to engaging with a virtual CISO. There's it depends upon what they have, the experience that they have on staff, and the bandwidth that they have. More often than not, though, this can help those that are already engaged with a virtual or fractional CISO understand a little bit more about where where their consultant is coming from. So why are they going through this? Why is this important to the program? And that was more so, again, remember, this started out as a lead magnet. So it's like,
Sure.
these are some things you should know. And by the way, work with us.
Yeah.
So I think it is a good companion for clients.
In the last couple minutes here, we still have a few things to get to, but I wanted, like, in terms of what you have seen in the 7 years that you've been doing this virtual CISO work, what are still some of the problems that continue to be sore points for you when you're looking at the SMB market? What is there a top 2, top 3 that come to mind for you?
Well, yeah. I mean, one we've already discussed, that's bad advice. In fact, I think
Okay.
you use those words.
Yeah.
On the virtual CISO moment, I always ask what's one of the big threats to cybersecurity for an InfoSec, I should say, for SMBs, and bad advice is one of them. And then, the corollary of that is having unqualified virtual CISOs. There's a whole bunch of like more pressure for SMBs to need to engage in this sort of a service. At least they think so, because they're getting pressure from their prospects and their customers saying, "Hey, we need to know more about your security program." And certainly some official actions, like everything CMMC, for example, has
Oh,
prompted a lot of this.
sure.
So and that's a good thing, in that compliance. It's good to be compliant, but from a security program standpoint, it often is the gateway into building a program. I don't think that there's going to be a drawdown in need for such. I do think that there's going to be that split between real effective consultants and those that are just really focused more on first line.
I, I would tend to agree with you. So, well, hey, listen, we've reached the end of this tiny little episode. I want to give you a minute. What are you here to plug other
Yeah.
than your book? Or you can plug that some more if you'd like. This is your opportunity for a shameless marketing.
Well, I'll plug the fact that I will be at the National Cyber Summit in late
Okay.
September. Unsure when this is going to air, understanding that, so maybe I was there, and have a few other projects involved. In fact, I've been doing work with those who follow me on LinkedIn know that I've been doing work as a contributor to a couple of TV shows with Now Media. Got a project involved there that I'm not ready to really talk about yet, but I'm really excited about it.
That's really cool. So we're
Um,
going to see you on Netflix?
you can already see me on Roku, so it's because Now Media, they've 31 million is their audience, and but this is going to be something focused hopefully on technology. We're working on what this might look like, so more to come later.
That Greg, keep up the good work, and we wish you continued success, and come back, maybe not 2 years from now.
Hey,
You know,
I'm always happy to come back. I really appreciate being invited back on, and I just can't believe it's been 2 years. I know I've
no,
gotten a little bit grayer here, it looks like. So.
I don't know. Well, no, I think you've gotten a little younger, actually. When I look at the picture from the last time, maybe you got a snazzy new studio with lighting and everything. Last time you didn't have that. So,
It's same place, but it's things that I enhanced for the TV thing. So more to come on that. So.
well, it's all great. Well, hey, Greg, you have a great day. Appreciate you stopping by and giving us a little bit of knowledge here.
Appreciate the invite, and we will talk later. Not 2 years from now, but sooner.
Sounds good. Take care. Bye bye.